Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the CBAN Showcase 2020. For those who did not join our previous session, this is the inaugural event by the Communications Business Automation Network that brings together the whole CBAN ecosystem of ICT service providers and technology developers who work together to automate the business of communications and to unlock the future of connectivity. Our next session is titled Collaboration over Competition. Why should carriers invest and be part of CBAN's development? And I'm delighted to welcome our panel of senior leaders from CBAN member organizations. Please join me in welcoming Bertolt Frech, Vice President at Deutsche Telekom, Jim Fagan, Chief Strategy and Revenue Officer for Global Cloud Exchange, Jan Au, Executive Vice President for China Telecom, Daniele Mancuso, Chief Product Management for Sparkle, and your moderator, Mark Halfinger, CEO of PCCW Global. Before I hand over to Mark to lead the discussion, I would like to highlight just a couple of items. Firstly, please feel free to ask questions during the session. You can ask a question using the Q&A function, and our presenters will ensure there is time to answer the questions at the end of the session. Please also post about this on your social media if you can by using the hashtag CBAN Showcase. And with that, I would like to thank our panelists for joining us today and hand over to Mark to lead the discussion. Over to you, Mark.
Jussi, thank you very much, and welcome everyone who's attending, and thank you, Mr. Au, for joining us all the way from China, where it's already very late. Daniele and Bertolt in Europe, and Jim, I don't know if you're in Europe or in the United States at the moment, but we certainly have a globally diverse panel, which hopefully will also indicate the value that CBAN has. CBAN was conceived 3 years ago through the realization of the importance of automating settlement. That concept not only holds true in 2020, but quite frankly, as the world of ICT services is increasing its complexity at an extremely rapid pace, is arguably becoming ever more important. And so as such, automating settlement seems now no longer optional, but rather as critical for the industry, a necessity. CBAN has been developed by several of the leading international service providers, recognizing the critical necessity of developing an approach to automated settlement. But can those functions go beyond just the carrier world, and can they be of value to the wider ICT industry? What is CBAN, and how is it formed as a concept of collaboration as opposed to a concept of competition? And that perhaps is the reason why we've gathered together here at this inaugural CBAN Showcase panel. And I'm very grateful for all of you for joining. And perhaps if I start with the first question, perhaps to you, Daniele, if you wouldn't mind. Tell me, how are Telecom Italia Sparkle doing? And tell me, why did you see, from Sparkle's point of view and from Daniele Mancuso's point of view, the reason and the need to launch CBAN? What's your view?
Well, thank you, Mark, first of all, for this warm welcome. Very glad to be here with all of you today. It's a very interesting question. I mean, going back to 3 years ago, when you mentioned the initiative by the GLF and the several proof of concepts that came immediately after, until this, I would say, future proof of concept of October 2018 that was led by Colt and PCCW Global, where I think it was really the first time that an ecosystem of carriers were demonstrating what would be the future of telecom. Everybody around the table, I believe, for a long time felt the need of the hard stops provided by manual activities around the processes of billing and settlement. I would say both from an efficiency point of view, internal efficiency of every service provider, but also from a really stop on the development process of new services. Here we always talk about digital transformation, about how the digital enablers are changing the life of everybody. I believe that enterprises is building up on the experience that consumers are having day by day in really consuming experiences around smartphones, mobility, and mobile payments. Enterprises are building up on this and are asking ICT service providers to develop new services, which could not exist if we don't automate certain processes. So at Sparkle, we strongly felt the need to innovate, but it's something that we understood that we couldn't do alone. It's not enough to do few proof of concept. It's an industry shift that we need to lead. And therefore, CBAN, with its special purpose vehicle, it's the right place and the right way to do it.
Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate that. Very, very sharp, very to the point. And Mr. Ao, perhaps from the perspective of China Telecom, can I just ask, what in general was your view, the motivating factor? For those who don't know, China Telecom has been very active from day one in the establishment of the initial working groups that were the precursor to the establishment of CBAN. China Telecom always very active. What was the view from CT's perspective? Why join CBAN?
Thank you, Mark. So thank you very much. So this is also my pleasure to participate in this panel. And as you said, so China Telecom, we are joined the CBAN very initially. So because we know that the CBAN is mainly initiated and formed by the industrial leaders in the regions and the vertical industries. The members, we are working together to provide the global services to our customers. And the potential market is very huge. The blockchain in telecom market was valued about $150 million in 2019, and is expected to reach $670 million by 2025 at a CAGR of 28% over the forecast period from this year to 2025. And the 5G deployment and IoT business expansion will encourage the industry to accelerate adopting the blockchain technology as well. So for example, in China, China Telecom's 5G business was officially launched last November. And by now, 1 year later, there are about 300,000 5G base stations in use, covering all prefectural level cities nationwide. And by the end of September 2020, our 5G subscribers is about 65 million by the end of September, and the penetration rate is about 18.5%. 5G SA standalone network will be commercially launched in the fourth quarter this year. And part of that, China Telecom, we are operating the largest NB-IoT network in China with more than 70 million connections. And we have set up our IoT enabling platform in mainland China and Hong Kong as well. These facilities have laid down the fundamental of the blockchain business for us. And we believe the blockchain is a trend for the future as well. China Telecom believes the blockchain is the future. And we have started to apply the technology in ongoing and potential projects within our organizations. So currently, we have deployed our own blockchain infrastructures platform named CT Chain to support services cleaning and settlement automatically among the provincial branches with the support of partition consistence of improved scalabilities. By leveraging the benefit of the CT chain, the various systems are deployed, such as the e-bidding system, core system cleaning platform, digital access management based on the theme, and so on. And we believe the cooperation is to build up an ecosystem as well. The global digitalization requires the cooperations and interoperation among the participants. All the parties should work closely to improve the operational efficiencies, accelerate product portfolio enrichment, and create new revenue streams for telecom parties. And this is can be accomplished through the creation of a blockchain-based infrastructure, enabling automatizations of inter-carrier settlement. And of course, CBAN is a great platform and wants to join in and work together with our international players. And also our China Telecom's R&D research and development capabilities will support us to work with the CBAN. You know, China Telecom, we have 3 major R&D institutes based in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. The institutes work actively in new technology and standards research, development, and testing, including but not limited to 5G, AI, big data, blockchain. In 2020, our 5G SA standard has been adopted by the GSMA as our official 5G implementation standard. This work task was led by China Telecom and worked closely with the industry players. With the abundant experiences in the standard research, our R&D institutes would be very happy to participate more in CBAN projects and work closely with all members to get through the challenges in the industry. And finally, we believe the CBAN plays a critical role in enable all different functions of China Telecom to interact with the partners around the globe. And to work for that, we have formed a dedicated team for the CBAN internally. And this team includes both business and technical experts to facilitate the alignment of industry standards with CBAN. This is our commitment to work with CBAN, and we would like to join the CBAN as well.
Thank you very much. That's a very extensive answer where you covered really all of the components, the industry evolution, the situation in China and how it's evolving. But you also hit on something that perhaps I want to extract a little bit later in the conversation that's so important, which is internal organizational and operational commitment that you're describing, not just from the R&D teams, but from the operational sides of the OSS and BSS teams. And I congratulate you on the approach. Let me park there. I want to come back to that in a little bit later on, because I think that that's quite critical. And thank you very much for that comprehensive approach. Maybe I flip to the other side, because CT was always involved with us with CBAN and with the working groups before, and together with Deutsche Telekom, with Bertold, and with Telekom Italia Sparkle, Daniela, and with all the various other service providers that Luisa mentioned in the earlier presentation about who's joining. But Jim Fagan from Global Cloud Exchange, you're the new guy on the block. What was it that got your organization to see the value in CBAN? At the moment, you're not a member of the GLF. You're driving a primarily capacity only environment. But how do you see the interaction or the integration, the value both for Global Cloud Exchange and for CBAN? And what do you see as the roadmap and the reason for joining?
Great, thanks for that, Mark. And at Global Cloud Exchange, we're excited to be joining CBAN and moving forward with this. So thank you for the welcome, and thank you for the chance to participate today. As you mentioned, while we do have mostly a capacity service, we also have a large enterprise managed services business as well. And I think what we've seen that a lot of our cost and complexity is really on items that shouldn't be, which is billing, settlement. I look at all my fellow panelists. We're all competitors, but we're all customers of each other. And as much as we like to talk about software-defined networking, SD-WAN, as we move to 5G, as we kind of quote cloudify the network, if we don't get those backends fixed, if we don't get that automated where it's not bespoke bilateral agreements, that blocks everything. So we can talk about the technology, we can talk about what we're doing on the OSS side, we can talk about maybe what tools we're putting on the BSS side, but without that interlinking, not only for us internally, so how we can actually drive costs out of our business, how we can actually deploy services at a faster rate, how we can actually take those dollars and invest in new products and services, but overall for us as an industry, how do we make this so we can actually all work together? We can take that cost and complexity of settlement out, and we can all focus on kind of what our core markets are, and then how we actually drive into new products and services. And I think that's actually been the big anchor, so to speak, on all of our transformations, and particularly in the ICT industry. You know, for those of us that provide a series of difficult, bespoke, where you have to work with third parties to deliver, this is kind of the crux of the issue. And it's one of those that gets overlooked. And I think CBAN, with coming together in GLF, and I've obviously been following it, being in the industry for the last few years, has really taken a novel approach at it. You know, the idea of how we bring this together, it's not about how we, you know, how you kind of force people into standards. It's about how we evolve together, how we bring our mutual challenges to the table, and then underpin that with a technology vision that can change and adapt as we uncover that. So from a GCX perspective, we're quite excited to join, help drive that forward, and you know, looking forward to what this group can bring, and hopefully, you know, we extend that not only to our to the people that are carriers and members of the GLF, but to the broader ICT industry.
Got it. Thanks very much for that. And so, you know, if I have to say, you're looking at it, if I had to paraphrase for a moment, you're looking at it not so much about creating efficiencies for what you've been doing for the past few years, but rather about opening up the opportunities for you in the future at the industry level. Is that a fair paraphrase?
Yeah, Mark, that is. And I think obviously that we know we have to kind of fix what we do today. And I think that's what's exciting, is there's some initial savings. There's an initial way to actually drive a business case on how you implement it. So it's not on this just the future. It's going to allow us to get more efficient today, to drive costs out, to be better. But the real opportunities in that future that you mentioned. Thanks
very much. Appreciate that. Bertolt Freff from Deutsche Telekom, and for the last few years, I've been cooperating with the Deutsche Telekom people, and we've watched them do various proofs of concept in the roaming side with GSMA, and work at the GLF and in MEF and certainly now in CBAN. But can I just go a step deeper with you? I mean, if you want to also answer some of the previous questions, please feel free to do so. But as the CBAN, Deutsche Telekom has been quite committed. And so if CBAN solutions start to move into production, and because you have actually been leading a lot of the interaction with service providers, what would you say are the internal collaborations that are required in and amongst the various players that would want to get involved at different stages? Can you give us a view?
Sure, Mark, and yeah, thanks very much for the question. Before I go a little bit into this collaboration aspect within the company, I would also like to emphasize that digitization and standardization is at the heart of Deutsche Telekom global carrier strategy. We strongly believe that really end-to-end digitization, from the offering phase down to production and settlement, is key for a true digital experience. And here, I guess, CBAN, with the initiative to provide the automation of the settlement part, let's say, of the process chain, is absolutely crucial for Deutsche Telekom. And that's why we've been driving many activities, running proof of concepts on the voice side, on the roaming side, to make sure that the technology fits to the needs of the carrier community and, of course, also to Deutsche Telekom. Now, when it comes to the parties involved internally to make such a running, let's say, of course, you have teams from various parts of the organization. So you have the technical teams, typically very concerned about the technical capabilities, the technical stability, the ease of integration of the solution into, let's say, the technical environment within the company. And you have the commercial teams that are more looking towards, okay, what new opportunities can we create on the product development side? How can we improve customer experience with a truly digital solution? And last but not least, also, how can we minimize internal efforts and move away from tedious manual processes that today's world is not supporting anymore? And when you work out a solution like that, you have to make sure that you cater for the needs of all these different internal parties. And you have to keep an eye on your partners as well, because they may have slightly different perspectives on these different parts, let's say, and you have to cater for those as well.
I get it. So you're saying that so not everybody is moving at the same pace, right? And so let me ask you then, if that's the case, in simple terms, what is the 1, 2, 3 steps if there are various service providers now, whether from the community or from the carrier community or application who are watching, what would you say are the, Bertold, I'll continue with you in just a moment, the basic 1, 2, 3 steps, the first thing that an organization needs to do beyond deciding, yes, I want to be involved in CBAN, what do you think needs to form inside that organization in order to be active? Can you give us a view?
Yeah, from our perspective at Deutsche Telekom, the initiatives are very much driven by the commercial units, I have to say, because they see the opportunities from implementing such a global standard and, let's say, creating new customer experience and new product features, let's say, based on that. And this is a driving force here at Deutsche Telekom. And the commercial units are then bringing along the technical teams, the teams responsible for billing and settlement, let's say, within the company, to join that mission, let's say, and support this new era, let's say, of service creation.
Understood. Thank you very much. Daniela, I know that you are also very influential. You're a member of the board of directors of MEF, and you're also actively involved here in CBAN and a number of other industry organizations. Does CBAN need to collaborate with other industry associations? And if so, what are the key components? Or should other industry associations be concerned that somehow CBAN is doing something competitively? How do you marry the fact that you're involved in multiple industry associations, and how should the different service providers listening today think about this ecosystem of forums, standards, and organizations? And maybe you can layer that against a little bit of what Bertold was just saying about what's required inside an organization in order to evolve, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. Very interesting question. I would really answer with the title of our panel. It's again a collaboration over competition. It doesn't apply just to service providers, but it applies also to standard organizations as well. As you said, I am also active as a MEF director, and I'm very happy that MEF last week at the quarterly meeting was approving a project that also your organization was committing to support, that is the DLT-based commerce, exactly for billing and settlement. Now, I believe that between MEF and CBAN, we were establishing what really should be the collaborative way. CBAN was committing to support this MEF development, which is, I think, the base of how things should move in the industry. As we said at the beginning of the panel, we are here to make an industry shift. So when you want to do an industry shift, the service provider should cooperate at all levels. So we should avoid to all extent to try recreating the wheel at every time. Otherwise, our garage will be full of wheels, but there will not be any car that is driving to no place. So there are a lot of initiatives, as you said, that are around DLT, but I believe that each SDO should be layered to a specific topic, and all SDOs should cooperate together to reach the broader target. Concerning the way I see the evolution, what it's needed in an organization to evolve and support CBAN and support the automation of billing and settlement. Well, certainly it cannot be a single person or a single department effort. There must be a broader commitment within the leadership team at all levels. It's a technical issue, therefore, finally to establish a working DLT node. It's a commercial topic, it's a strategic topic. But we can summarize, I believe, again, on the experience that we want to give to our customers. I believe today loyalty by customers is not measured anymore just by quality versus price. Experience is what they need. They want everything as a service. They pretend that everything shall be on demand. So if you don't automate at all level, and you don't automate those parts that are really human intensive and sometimes error prone, you can be basically wiped out from the playing game.
Understood. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it. Mr. Au, let me ask you, and maybe you can use the China example or just your own perspective, or feel free to throw the question back. But CBAN was originally established really by what is commonly referred to as carriers, the telco-based network, so to speak. In your mind, do you think that CBAN is just for carriers, or can clouds be involved and applications involved? Do you see the wider ecosystem being part of CBAN as a natural evolution? I know that in China already there's some ownership collaboration between the network and the cloud. Just curious in your view, if you'd like to share.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So from China Telecom's view, we believe that we should work very closely with all the players in the industry. So you know that for telecommunications players, just provided, we cannot just provided the connection, so we must provide the applications as well. We should set up the ecosystem. So for example, for China Telecom, I just mentioned, we work together with the industry. We work with the manufacturing. We work with the agriculture systems. So we set up our IoT platform. So this is the basic facilities for us to connect all the elements in the product chain. So by connecting with them automatically, we can set up our cleaning and settlement automatically. This will increase the efficiencies. And we set up the trust societies with all the players in the environment. And we also we believe that the privacy for the data is very critical factors for us to work with the other players. So we have, I just mentioned, we have the R&D Institute, and we work together with the industry players to settle the data privacy issues as well. Thank you, Mark.
That's very helpful. Thank you. So quite interesting that in China already there's a collaboration effectively between clouds and networks, and that there can be a value there, and that you see that at the very core. But I think that sometimes the challenges may not even be in and among networks and clouds, but perhaps even inside our own organizations, if the organizations are large. Bertold, would you care to comment at all on already with the POCs that Deutsche Telekom has done? Have you had any internal organizational challenge, or is everybody on board from day one and it's very easy to get things going?
Well, you know, a large corporation like Deutsche Telekom, you have many different parties and you have many different interests, of course, within the company. From my experience, one of the biggest challenges is that there's different legacies in different parts of the organization. And at Deutsche Telekom, we have a large set of what we call national companies, so affiliates, predominantly in Europe, but of course also beyond Europe, that operate their own networks, that provide their own solutions. And one of our key value propositions is really act as a one-stop shop for our customers, giving access to the entire capabilities of Deutsche Telekom. So basically combining all affiliates capabilities and assets as part of a solution. And even within Deutsche Telekom, you can imagine that there is in many areas not one common standard that we can rely on. So it is quite a tedious job to interact between the different entities to create a solution that crosses boundaries, that incorporates elements from across the different affiliates of Deutsche Telekom. And that's why standardization and automation, you know, on the basis of standards is so important, even internally, for a company of the size of Deutsche Telekom. And Of course, we are also adding third-party services to our solutions as everybody else. So basically, this is just an extension, I would say, of the footprint that Deutsche Telekom provides on its own. And that's why creating these standards, making sure that everybody is implementing and using these standards within the company, but also within the wider industry, is pivotal for the success from my perspective.
So collaboration is not just from a corporation out, it's also going to help corporation in, and we
Absolutely.
have to all the boundaries of demarcation that we have. Very, very interesting point. Let me also point out to the audience, please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen in order to ask questions, and we'll be happy to do our best amongst the panel to use the remaining time to answer any question that might be written from the audience. And thank you all for taking the time today to join and to hear the panel. And so let me ask you, Jim, I think we heard also about the forward view. You talked about how you thought there were going to be the forward services out there, the buzzwords that are commonly bashed about: 5G, IoT, on-demand, cloudifying, and so on. Are there hidden values that we're missing here, perhaps? That distributed ledger, blockchain might be a value, and I'm thinking maybe around identity, verification, security. Do any of those resonate with you, or is it really just about making sure that just financial settlement is there and nothing else matters? What's your view?
Hey, Mark, thanks for that question. And you kind of hit on the first thing that popped into my mind is for all that, right? So obviously, on the back end, there's the billing and settlement, what was used, making sure people get paid, et cetera. And there's an agreement on the services consumed or used. But I think a big portion of any of those buzzwords that you threw out is identity. And identity management, if you look today, it's quite clumsy overall. Every system usually has a different one. Obviously, there's kind of like Microsoft Identity, et cetera, which spans across a lot of different ecosystems. But it is clumsy. And then when you start talking about, taking that away from organizations, people, even endpoint devices, and going into, if you think about the forecast, billions of IoT devices, and you think about 5G connectivity. So establishing that strict kind of chain of identity and being able to quickly verify that is key. And then obviously the last point you hit on is the security aspect. I mean, we're all seeing the security impacts with, that have been going on in the industry for a while. These new solutions bring on kind of shift the paradigm on how you protect from that, as there kind of is no more perimeter with any of this. So, blockchain can play a key role in how, when these services are done, who actually gets to access them, who gets to see what data, who gets to, how that is encrypted or not encrypted. So I think it really does open up the possibilities to solve a lot of what has been kind of the fundamental, blockers, in my view, of really getting some of these newer technologies to scale.
Thanks very much, Jim. Appreciate that. That's quite helpful. And I'd like to throw out a question to all of you, but lead with Daniela, who's across so many different industry forums and so on. Daniela, what is it that you think that this organization, CBAN, which is member funded and not for profit, how does it open its doors and really attract the people that aren't there from day one, the clouds or the apps or whatever the case? What is it that CBAN, in your view, needs to do, and what's the channel to get that message out? And what do you think, perhaps the clouds themselves, what would they find attractive about CBAN if CBAN could do it? What would be your view from day one? And then perhaps others might be interested to offer their view after Daniela.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's an interesting question. We have spoken already at board level about what we can do to attract other subjects. I believe clouds, hyperscalers are slowly or fastly moving to the telecom former space. It's of last week, the news that Microsoft Azure was joining MEF. So this is the first, I think, big move in this space. And I believe that CBAN will probably be the next target for those giants to move. Because I believe we are building a very interesting ecosystem, and we are proving that telecoms can really collaborate together. So since the telecom space today is really entering into the core of those hyperscalers, you know, every of the guys around the table is having cloud connects with private lines, with on-demand flavors. So the ecosystem is becoming broader and broader. The telecom space is entering into the heart of the hyperscalers, and the hyperscalers are moving towards our boundaries. So I believe a broader collaboration there is needed and probably favorable, just to be still attached to the old war between the telcos and the OTTs. I believe that we moved already away from that space. I would also support an eventual movement of CBAN to attract even broader industries, something that goes beyond, I would say, ICT and telecom and cloud providers. Because blockchain is today in several industries, in finance, in supply chains. I believe that CBAN can be a model to be exported also beyond the ICT industry.
Thanks very much, Daniele. That's it. Would anybody else be interested in adding to that? Bertold, perhaps?
Sure. I guess, a standard is, as powerful as its adoption rate, let's say. Yeah. So if you're the only one using a standard, obviously it's not really a standard, and you need a certain gravity in order to really make sure that the industry as a whole is starting to using it, and that's what it's making it a standard. And I guess CBAN has been very successful to attract, the key players of the carrier industry to do exactly that, make sure that these common standards are being developed and adopted by the industry. At the same time, Daniele rightfully said that the borders are blurring between, the cloud providers, the carriers, the IoT providers. So I guess it is about time now, to widen up and to make sure this gravity I'm mentioning goes beyond, let's say, the carrier industry. It includes those parties that are pivotal for the solutions that our end users are basically using and purchasing, let's say, from us.
Understood. Understood. Oh, did I mute? No. Okay, there we are. So your message is very clear, and we do have a couple of questions from the floor. So maybe see if I can integrate them and see if we can create them. As a carrier, what are the requirements of me over and above becoming a member of CBAN in order to avail benefits of automated billing and settlement? So I guess the question there is, if you're already a member of CBAN, what do you need to do? And I think we answered, Bertold, you gave a pretty good answer of what we need to do in terms of an organization to function and to build out. You need to make sure that you create an organizational commitment. Jan presented already how China Telecom is really looking at blockchain as a critical component of all of its ecosystem evolution. Does anyone want to add to that of what they think organizationally is necessary in order to avail themselves of the benefits of automation in their organization? Because I think, a good amount of that we covered. All right, let's go on to the next question.
Maybe just to add, Mark, if I may, that the boundaries to join CBAN are, of course, extremely low. Yeah, so I guess we are open and inviting everybody who wants to join. But in order to make this really successful and viable for the parties joining this initiative, you want to make sure that within the organization you get the support across the organization from all the different parties involved.
Absolutely, 100%. That's spot on, because you can join and then you can sort of watch what's going on. But if you're not actually taking part and generating inertia and momentum inside your organization, you won't be able to avail the benefits of the framework that's being set up. The next question that's asked, is there any telecom service provider that would have a corporate strategy to acquire an innovative company, a startup, who is specialized in blockchain technology, instead of developing it organically through in-house resources, normally having legacy mindsets and tools? Well, first of all, whoever's asking the question already has a view that the carrier community is legacy. And let's just say that all carriers out there are trying to use the best knowledge they have. I'll finish with you, Jim, but let me first go to you, Mr. Au, and say, you mentioned that China Telecom is doing a lot of work internally. I'll just ask, was all of that done organically, or did you also acquire or with startups in China, or are you working with third-party suppliers in the OSS, BSS type of environment in this space? What is your, can you tell us at all, or at least hint?
Okay, thank you, Mark. So, we have the R&D as well. So, but we also work with the third parties as well. So, work with the third parties is very critical for us. So we can fully understand what the customer needs, and we can fully understand what the industry interested. So we can collaborate with them to provide the services the customer really wanted. I would like to implement that. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. And Jim, what's your view? Do service providers have to do this on their own because the things in the back door are so complex, or is the accelerant done through some sort of acquisition of technology?
Well, I think it's one. I think it needs to be some sort of partnership working on it. So there needs to be that balance between, if you just go and get a new technology startup or someone knows and you just bring it in and try to let it, kind of incubate on its own, I think that's a bit of a recipe for disaster, because you do need to understand the problem that the service provider is trying to solve. So there needs to be some collaboration, whether it's through an acquisition or a partnership. But I do think it's, if you look at blockchain in particular and some of the newer technologies, it's a new skill set. Trying to hire each of those resources individually, bring them on, is a long journey to do that. And then I think also it's going to depend on your organization itself. Are you actually trying to really monetize that service? Is like the blockchain itself the service, or is it an enabler then to do partnerships with CBAN? So to me, as I look at that, that ecosystem, it's more about who can I partner with, understanding where my needs are, who can I actually partner with as a kind of third-party provider, or maybe even a little bit deeper relationship type thing to help bring those out, versus a kind of the idea of going, wow, I need to go out and get a company and bring it in-house. But also I do think the idea of trying to kind of really grow this organically is just too slow of a process. So it's a bit of a hybrid, but obviously it's going to depend on the service provider, what your strategy is around blockchain, and where you see the value based on your needs.
That's brilliant. I want to step in here. I know I'm supposed to ask questions, but I'll just offer a comment. I hope you all won't mind. And that is, I think that one of the most amazing things that CBAN has accomplished in its early life, and it started at the tail end of when it was still a working group at GLF, was the fact that CBAN and the people involved around it were able to bring together a number of technology service providers who would normally compete with one another, somewhere between 10 and 12 different technology players, vendors effectively, who would usually compete, and they all sat around a room together for days and weeks on end in order to create a commonly acceptable reference framework. Without that work of the technology group, together with the service provider community, agreeing that reference framework that appears now as 2.0, which will be talked about in the coming days on the showcase, I don't think that we would have that. So I really think we have to salute the technology providers and not just the service providers, because they were willing to show their cards to one another in order to create this common industry framework. And around that framework, perhaps the way to accelerate may be, for some companies, M&A, some companies like China Telecom or Deutsche Telekom or Telekom Italia Sparkle that have such grand amount of resources, they may be able to develop it organically. But what CBAN has done has been to create this commonly acceptable technology reference framework, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. And I think that that's exciting. Any comments to that, Daniela, perhaps?
Well, perfectly in agreement with you. I would like to add that, of course, it depends what is also the customer base of the single service provider. If you have a customer base on which you are thinking to develop something related to supply chain. It might be also the case of an acquisition. But I believe that for the purpose, the mission that we agreed with the GLF promise a few years ago, I believe that the CBAN is the perfect way and the best way to realize that promise. Partnerships are also definitely a good way to integrate in a vertical flavor different subjects that are acting at a different level of the chain of values. But in my opinion, for automating billing and settlement, the answer is CBAN. We have it in front of us.
Well, Daniele, you've left us. You brought us literally to the last moment of of the time that's allocated by the organizers, and you're saying that the roadmap to collaboration is definitely driven through the framework that was established by CBAN. I want to thank everyone who joined: Mr. Au from China Telecom, Jim Fagan from Global Cloud Exchange, Bertold Frech from Deutsche Telekom, who's a grand leader in everything that's happening, Daniele Mancuso, the Chief Product Officer of Telecom Italia Sparkle, who has got his feet in so many different forms and really understands that this is not about competition, but rather collaboration. I want to thank you all for joining with us, and I hope those of you who attended enjoyed the discussion. And if those of you are still thinking about whether it's worthwhile, I hope you'll join in and understand the value of what CBAN can deliver. It's about collaboration, not about competition. Thank you all very much and have a great day.
Thank you, Mark, for leading that discussion. And thank you also for all of our other panelists, Bertold, Jim, Jan, and Daniele, for an excellent debate. We will now take a short break before the start of the next session on the hour. The next session is titled Automating Settlement for Data on Demand. This session will be led by our CTO, Joe Ruffles, and we will hear from Colt, R3, and Infosys on why and how the industry intends to automate the settlement for data on demand. Please also remember to post about the showcase on your social media using the hashtag CBAN Showcase. And if you want any more information, do visit our website at cban.net. So with that, I'd like to thank you, everyone, and I will see you soon.